Jane and Rochester are crepuscular. And maybe that word sounds a little icky, but it's actually wonderful and magical. So other things that are crepuscular are, for example, deer, my favorite animals, and it means something of the dawn and the dusk. So I know this is when deer can see best at those times of day, because that's when the light is soft enough and their eyes are able to like really perceive the world in full clarity. And I think it's the same thing with Jane and Rochester when they see each other in that light.
She describes herself as beautiful, and love made her beautiful. Like, she talks about that so much, where she starts to see beauty in people and places and things as she starts to get this emotional connection with them. We see that throughout the story. But the fact that in being loved in return, she sees that beauty in herself. Dang, girl.
Yeah.
That's cute.
It's so cute. Hello, Lillian.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going so very good.
Yeah.
Because we read the best part of the book.
Oh, we sure did. Yes. I am very jazzed. I am full of lovey feelings and tragic sorrow. So I'm excited to get into this.
I will say I do have a small correction for people that I found out while we were reading this. We thought there was more book after chapter 24 when they're just in love and they're going to get married, but there just isn't.
Oh, it just stops right there.
My version is just a bunch of blank pages after that, and I'm going to just go with that. That's
Cool.
where the book ends for me.
Aww.
At least. They're in love and they're happy and they're kissing and it's great. And they're about to get married.
Yeah. And that's all we need to know. All those weird kind of like ominous feelings, they were just her being silly. There's nothing going on.
You know how sometimes you're just silly? She probably needs therapy because it's probably some sort of anxiety or something like that. But, you know, I think that their love will cure that and it's all fine now, right, Piper?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
So, Lillian, do you want to remind our listeners which chapters did we talk about read that we're about to talk about?
Sad news, guys. That was a joke. There are in fact chapters after chapter 24. We read chapters 21, which starts that's right when Mason leaves. We start back again. She's going back to Gateshead, and then through chapter 26, where in fact it turns out he does have a wife who has been locked in his attic.
Oh, geez. Ain't that just the way?
It wasn't all in her head in the end, despite what Rochester tells her over and over and over again.
Yes. I was so curious to read that scene in particular. And I think we're going to save our main thoughts till let's kind of go chronologically.
Yeah.
But it was because that's like one of the biggest moments in the story and we've seen it done in so many different ways. I was so curious to be like, how does this actually read? So can't wait to dive into that.
I feel like every chapter in this book, I feel that way about. Where
right?
like every part of this, I'm like, oh, that's what it really is. Okay.
Yeah, I think this is an experience that those who read the book first, they're totally missing out because I'm just like, whoa, it's like my third eye has opened and I'm like, I can see clearly now.
Yeah, you guys, don't you want to be full experts on Jane Eyre and have talked about it on 30 recorded podcasts before you actually read these scenes in the book?
Speaking of 30 recorded podcasts, I was checking out our statistics today and we have surpassed 2,000 total listens. So thank you, audience and friends and new Jane Eyre family. We love you all so much. And we're so excited that you are listening and joining us and educating us and sharing your thoughts. So
yeah,
rad.
We talk all the time, Piper and I know we talk about it on the podcast a little bit, but at some point, this can't just be a fan cast about our fans. Genuinely, we love you guys so much. This is something that we thought would be fun to do together. And the fact that you guys are also enjoying it brings us so much joy. All of the information you guys share with us, the community that you guys have allowed us into, so much joy. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
Here are our uneducated takes.
So my first note that I have is about this dream that Jane has at the beginning of this section of the book. Do you remember this dream? Did you have notes about this?
Here's my note on it. Weird.
Yeah. My first note is that, so there's a child that Jane dreams about, and it's, I think, insanely significant that she has this dream 7 nights in a row, which I have had reoccurring dreams before, but I've never had the same dream every single night for a week. And obviously, we're dealing with gothic fiction here, and so the fates are trying to tell Jane something. But I was wondering, since having our knowledge of the story as a whole, I was wondering, is the child in the dream sort of an omen as she suspects, because she reflects on the story that I believe. Oh, what was her kind of nanny's name? Betsy,
Bessie.
Bessie,
I was
Bessie.
gonna, you were so close. I was so sure you were gonna get there. And I was just like, she's gonna keep saying it and then she's gonna get there. She's gonna get there all by herself.
Well, thank you for letting me try and fail.
I believe in you.
So she reflects on how Bessie told her when she was a little girl that dreaming of babies and children are often bad omens. But I also wonder, I mean, we do know that she will eventually have a child, if not more than one child with Rochester. So I almost wonder, is this partially an omen of the bad things that are to come that she's about to experience? But then is it also a glimmer of hope of the family that she will have with him in the future? So it's kind of that happiness and sadness rolled into one.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, because we get some more dreams in the future in this section of Jane's. There's a lot to unpack within that. There's a lot of parts of Jane Eyre in general where I'm like, I haven't done English writing since high school, but I was like, we could do a passage analysis on like just the dreams. Like we could really pull these apart. And I'm sure people have. Honestly, my biggest feeling is like, yeah, that sounds right. Like that's it. Cause I read these and I'm like, I'm not getting it. I'm just not getting there. And unfortunately, there's kissing on the next pages. So I got to keep going because
Keep going.
I can't read about your sad, scary child dreams when the cute man's going to say he wants to kiss you and stuff.
Seriously. So I felt that way about a couple of sections in this chapter. Mostly when she's at Gateshead, and we're like, all right, you need to get back to your man.
Okay.
But
So just one note as we continue on in this chapter. All of the Gateshead stuff happens in this one chapter. It is not that long. It feels like my whole life. It feels so much longer than it is. Because I was going back to look at my notes and I was like, no, that had to have been at least 2 chapters.
Right. Nope.
We start with this sad baby dream, child dream. By the end of that chapter, she knows about her uncle. We have money flirting. We have her going back to Gateshead. We have her talking to her cousins. We have her finding out about her surprise uncle. We have her cousins being whiny little bitches. We have her like wrapping that up and she's going to leave. Like all of that happens in this one chapter. It is not that long. You could argue that this is action packed and I struggled.
Oh yeah, no, same. I mean, there's very important information, like you say, but we know what's coming, and so we're just like, we need her to return.
And wow, do her cousins suck?
Yes,
I know that's the whole point. Is like it's almost a victory lap of like Jane, despite being sort of treated like garbage by these people and not meeting their standards, she is the better person at the end of the day, and they suck. I just don't like reading about people who suck.
Oh, I know. Same. But before we talk about that section, which I don't have much to say, because agreed, my whole note is just that they suck. My one thing that I had about the section with the cousins is I just wrote down Eliza's rant against Georgiana, period. Damn. Just like, Jesus, way to fucking burn a bridge and be like, I hate you. I never want to see you again. Everything about you sucks. I'm better than you. Goodbye. Like, wow. Okay.
Just the most intense humans who are just shitty to each other.
But the thing before that, we got to talk about how you flirt with your boss about money, because it's an incredible scene. The whole exchange is light and playful, and that's how I felt about a big chunk of this section that we're talking about. Is you can really see the natural unhindered joy, I think, between Jane and Rochester. The asking for the money scene is very playful. It's something I've always enjoyed in the movies. One thing that I did note, though, that is very present for me when reading this. As much as I loved that scene, I thought it was really fun. There's this thing where, so like they go into the side room and he closes the door and he puts his back against the door. And there's like two sides of this. One, I like that he's kind of like created this sort of bubble for them to just be natural with each other. They've sort of dropped the facade of this whole annoying game that he's been playing. But at the same time, it also feels as if he's very much controlling the situation. Like he's the one still, even though they have this playful banter, I don't think Jane could easily be like, and I need to go now. Not that she would want to because she's having fun, but that's kind of always there. And I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, I do think it's one of those things where I think classically, if you describe this exact same situation with someone you have a huge thing for, and like it is a very mutual feelings experience versus something where it's more unrequited. And like, if you imagine this as a scenario where she does not have feelings for him, this is horrendous.
Yes.
Now we know that that's not the case, so it's incredibly cute.
Right.
But I do think a part of me questions, like, I feel like Rochester, the Rochester that lives in my head and I feel in the book, but I think you can interpret it differently, is somebody who's would let Jane go if she said, I don't want to be in here. Like, even if she looked and felt uncomfortable, we see a lot in these chapters how in tune with Jane's feelings he is.
Yes.
And how much he's paying attention to those and adjusting his behavior around those. So I sort of interpret it as he sees that she would be more comfortable, like Jane, this very intense introvert, would be more comfortable in a space where it's just them and they have this privacy and they have this little bubble of safety, like you described. And I think she feels like it's safety, right?
Yeah.
Where I think it could be felt in other ways if that's not the feelings you have about this man that's trapping you in this room. But I think that's one of the advantages of a book, is that we are in Jane's head. We do know that she finds this cute and fun. Literally my notes on this, I just was looking at the pages, and what I wrote cute on here 4 times during the scene.
And it's very cute. It's cute quadrupled. It's quadruple cute.
Because I think one of the other things, speaking of this idea of safety, one of the other things that I think we see Rochester doing in this is trying to make sure that she's safe even beyond this place. Like, he specifically asks, like, you're going to do this whole trip by yourself? Like, that's not safe. You shouldn't be doing that. And she goes, no, I'm going with the coachman. And he's like, some strange dude. Nice try. Like, I'm going to go meet this man. I'm like, do you know him? Is he a stranger? She goes, no, I've known him since I was a little kid. He's like a friend. Like, it's fine. And he's like, okay. Oh no, you have to have money though. Do you have money? Here's 50 pounds. She's like, chill out.
Yeah, he's like, do you want 20 grand? Oh, here, take 20 grand. It's like, oh my God, dude.
A little pocket money. Here's twice your salary.
Yeah, he's gotta play it cool. You're wearing your heart out on your sleeve here, Rochester.
There's so many moments that I wrote down. Literally, so this is a question. This is a question that I wrote down. Is the first thing I put in my notes, and it is a question for you and ultimately our listeners. Do you think that there's anyone out there who reads this book? They unlike us, walked in not knowing the story of Jane Eyre. They don't know any of the things about this, maybe beyond the idea that it's like an autobiography of this woman and there's something happening in there. Do you think they read it and not know that he's in love with her? Like, do you think it's even remotely possible? Because she doesn't think he's in love with her at this point. Do you think some of the readers don't know?
No, I think you'd have to be pretty thick to not see this as the playful banter and like loving kind of games that it is. I mean, some of the games are bad games, but a lot of the stuff is I think he thinks he's subtle, and it's just simply because Jane doesn't see herself as lovable that she doesn't pick up on it, but everyone else around them would be like, wow, just kiss already.
I literally wrote kiss.
Yes. Very nice.
I think a great example of somebody who we have talked about the fact that they just take everything at surface level and they would miss any sort of subtlety at all is Mrs. Fairfax.
Yes.
She later is like, I knew he liked you. I mean, everybody knew he liked you.
Right, exactly. The writing was on the wall and she could see it.
If Mrs. Fairfax could pick up on the crush, there was a big crush happening here.
Yes, very, very true. So I have notes about the letter that Jane gets from Fairfax when she's at. See, I keep blanking on things today.
Gateshead.
Gateshead, thank you. And so, if I can jump to that section, if you don't mind.
Perfect. Please
So,
do.
Fairfax writes to Jane that Rochester is making all these wedding plans, and which is interesting to me because Jane at this point has been gone a month. And he's sent away the party, he's done with his games, but he's still in his own head. He's like, she will return at some point. And when that happens, I'm going to marry her. Like he's, making the preparations for this already without her even being there. And so my question to you, I got one right back for you, is if Jane didn't go home when she did, I wonder how long it would take for her to stay at Gateshead before he would just go and fetch her or come to her. Because I feel like if he's making these preparations to marry Jane whenever she returns, I think eventually he would be fed up with her absence and he would come. And I just wonder like how long that would take.
That's so interesting. I can't give, I mean, if like at least I think 6 months, because like time in this time was different. So like people
Mhm.
being away for like a month, like the time it takes her to travel and all that stuff. So like the time it would take him to break and go get her, I
Mhm.
feel like he would probably start with letters first and like other ways of getting to her. And honestly, I would not be surprised if he's feeding this idea of right about the wedding preparations to Jane to
Mm,
Mrs. Fairfax to like entice her to come back.
that's a good
Um,
insight.
but I also I also think that, oh, Rochester, you live in your little fairy dreamland, and he's choosing to do that. So I think that he could live in his, because that's really what we're asking, right? It's like, how long could he live in his own delusion that they're getting married, even though he hasn't asked her about it yet?
Right.
And I think he could do that for a very long time.
She stays away 6 months, comes back, and there's like a portrait of her hung next to his in the hallway. And he's like, look, I just decided to bite the bullet. Everything's ready for you. I chose the names of our future children. It's going to be great. Welcome home.
So, because I have something, a note on the right at that I think connects really well to this right at the beginning of the next chapter. Do you have anything else you want to say? I feel like we've talked about Gateshead.
Yeah, no,
We,
that
sorry guys,
section
we
is
don't
done.
care.
We don't care. Goodbye, reads.
You did it.
Yeah.
Um, but the beginning of the next chapter, she goes back to Thornfield, and
Mhm.
on her way, she's doing the like, it's you've been gone for the Christmas holiday and your crush is at school, and you're just thinking to yourself, for me, they were never thinking about me as much as I was thinking about them. But like you're like, oh my God, I've got to get myself together. I'm gonna see my crush. What am I gonna say to him when I first see him? Okay. So she's like in her head about that, and she's walking down the road, and then she sees him, and she does the cutest thing ever where she's like she kind of like, I picture her in my head like stopping and being like, oh God, okay, here's the other way I can get home because I'm not ready for this conversation yet. Oh shit, he saw me. Okay. Here's my question for you.
Mhm.
This is going to
Yes.
turn into us just interviewing each other.
Amazing.
How do you how often do you think he waits on that road hoping she's coming home?
All the dang time, like every day. I think he's like, well, this is probably, although he does make that comment, he's like, so like you to not come by carriage clattering along the road, but to walk through the fields like a little elf. And so, yeah, maybe he's like, if I were Jane and I were to come home without any notice, where would I be? This place. I will wait there for her.
It's the exact same as we see later in this section when Jane is like in the house and she's waiting for Rochester, and she's like waiting for him to come home, and she wants him to come home. And so she walks around the garden, and then she looks out to the gate and like, oh, he's still not here, and like waits and waits and waits. And so she ends up walking up the road. That's what I picture him doing. I picture him in the house and he's like, oh, Jane's going to come home soon. She already told Miss Fairfax she's coming and she's definitely going to come. And I've got all the wedding plans. And here's what I'm going to say in my proposal speech. Let me practice over and over again. Here's how I'm going to trick her about Ireland. Okay, I'm ready to go. I have lots of energy. I've doodled Mr. Jane Rochester Eyre Fairfax on my notebook 1,000 times. I just love her. Oh, well, I should stay here because I don't want to be too intense because that would be a lot because I don't want to come on too strong. Am I right? And so he's waiting in the house, and then he's like, she's definitely gonna come to carriage. I'll hear her in the carriage. And then he goes, oh my God, it would be so like Jane to walk across the field. I better go wait on the driveway. And he's been doing that for a week.
I have to say, so the doodling, Mr. Jane Eyre, Rochester, whatever, in the notebook, we know that Jane is a talented artist. And like we know later in the story, she draws pictures of Rochester when she misses him. I love the idea that in Rochester's notebook, there's just like a little stick figure. And it's got like a dress and maybe circles for boobs, and it just has like a word that says Jane, and then it's an arrow pointing at her, and then maybe he drew little elf ears on the head because he's like, an elf.
I bet he drew the elf ears and then put he next to it. I see him doing that. I also see him doing it absentmindedly on all paper that's set in front of him ever. So like people are getting like business notes from him, and just in the corners it just says Jane, 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 Jane Rochester, Jane, Mrs. Edward Jane Fairfax Rochester for kisses and love.
Oh my gosh. So dang cute. This chapter is when she returns and when he sees her and that interaction that they have, that section, so far, my favorite in the whole story. And the reason why, I read this scene I see him surrounded in a little like halo of just love and happiness.
Yeah.
Like he's missed her so much. He sees her at last. The way that he teases her in this scene, I hear it in my head as someone who is speaking with like honeyed words. And they're like, oh, there you are. And the thing that really makes me happy. So two things in this section is, so when he like says this thing that we've talked about of just like Jane to, come on foot. And there's a line here where he says, here, let me get my book up. Do. Yes, just one of your tricks, not to send for a carriage and come clattering over street and road like a common mortal, but to steal into the vicinage of your home along with twilight. And he says that, and then later she says, and he had spoken of Thornfield as my home. Would that it were my home. And this use of the word home is so special because earlier when she's walking, she wonders, what is it like to have a homecoming feeling? I don't know. I've never had a home before, but he refers to it that way. She longs for Thornfield to be her home, and that place of belonging and happiness, and to be greeted by a loved one after a journey. Wow.
Yeah.
Just wow.
I really feel like this is one of those moments where they're both looking at each other with puppy dog eyes. Like anyone who looks at them is like, whoa, those two are in love. And they just are both like, I don't know, like, she's so amazing. How could she possibly love me? And we hear Jane doing the same thing in her head. It's like, oh, if only I were so lucky. But, some people are Blanche Ingram and they get all the luck, as I definitely believe, you dumb dummy.
But even in this section, I think they both confirm to one another the beauty that they see in each other. Because I think truly, when he says the line about how you must see the carriage, Jane, and tell me if you don't think it will suit Mrs. Rochester exactly. And he goes on to describe the beauty of Mrs. Rochester. I see him in that scene. When he's saying that, I see his eyes just kind of slowly moving over her to be like, I'm talking about you, baby, like your future Mrs. Rochester, and you are so beautiful. And then they do that cute little joke about, he's like, too bad I'm ugly. Do you have one of your little charms to make me handsome? And she's like, no magic could make you handsome. And it's so cute. But then like she even says to him, she's like, a loving eye is all the charm needed. To such you are handsome enough, or rather your sternness has a power beyond beauty. And then there's this wonderful passage that she describes where he doesn't really know what to say, because I think that's the first time that Jane has maybe kind of vocally shown to him how much she admires him. And he just gives her this smile that she describes as, it was the real sunshine of feeling, and he shed it over me now. And it's just, everything about it is just love is just oozing between these two. And I love it.
It's so cute. I absolutely love, like I said, this is my favorite section of the book. My favorite chapter is 24, which we have a whole other section we need to talk about before we get there. But this would probably be a close second. I think you're right. And I think part of the reason why sections like this stand out to me in reading the book is because so much of the rest of it are those pillars of the story that we talk about. Like, I love the proposal. It's great. You have to have it and you have to have it this way. Where like this moment and some of the other moments that we see in this feel like special treasures of like their expressions of love that are outside of these critical plot moments that
Yes.
are just sweet and loving. And I like it. And the versions of it that we've seen in some of the adaptations that we've watched where he like is on the wall and like jumps down and is like just trailing after her like a puppy dog while she goes and says hi to everyone else. That's how I picture it 100%. So cute.
I love it very, very much. So we then get on to the chapter where the proposal happens.
Yes, but first we have to have a lot of description of a garden.
I'm okay with it because
I
for me,
know.
it really sets a beautiful scene and I love the imagery. I have to share this, I think, is one of my favorite observations that I've made while reading this. So, remember the first time that Jane and Rochester met, she was describing
Mhm.
that unique twilight of, the sun has just barely set, the moon is starting to rise. Here again, we have a similar setting. He mentions that, he talks about, like, how can you leave me during this special time?
Mhm.
And I was analyzing that. I'm like, wow, all of their like special moments happen at twilight. And it allows me to talk about them while using my favorite word of all time. Jane and Rochester are crepuscular. And maybe that word sounds a little icky, but it's actually wonderful and magical. So, other things that are crepuscular are, for example, deer, my favorite animals, and it means something of the
Cute.
dawn and the dusk. So,
Cute.
I know this is when, like deer can see best at those times of day because that's when the light is soft enough and their eyes are able to like really perceive the world in full clarity. And I think it's the same thing with Jane and Rochester when they see each other in that light.
Oh no, it's too cute, Piper. It's so cute.
I will accept my award for analysis and cutery. Thank you.
Analysis and cutery, the most coveted award.
Yes, thank you very much.
Oh my God. I love that. Because I think I'm having a moment where I read too many books and they may be collapsing into one, but I'm 90% sure this is in the book that she refers to Twilight as the most romantic hour during this. And I think that idea that they have this, I was going to try to find a way to make it a descriptive word, but they're crepuscular.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, great. I nailed it. That they see with clarity in those moments, that these moments where they're having this conversation and they're able to like, because we've talked about the idea that they do that in nature, that they do that when it's just them and they're able to drop these facades and all these things, but that these are the moments when this particular like time and this magical hour. I think one of the things that we see in the book a lot more than in the adaptions is the way that this kind of magical fantasy plays out between them. Because he refers to her as an elf way more often in this than he ever does in any of the adaptions. And there's this play off of this ongoing joke that they have that she is somehow a magical fairy. And we see that later in the book as well, which we're definitely going to talk about. But I think that idea that this is when those magical hours, because I think anyone with a romantic mind like you and I sees those times of that dawn and dusk moment and looks out on like that slight foggy morning where the sun just changes the light of everything and everything looks a little bit different and a little bit more romantic.
Yeah.
And the idea that that's when they see each other clearly. Are you
Mhm.
kidding me?
And it makes me think of, I think, one of the best lines that Jane comes back at him when they're doing this whole kind of like fight proposal moment is when she's talking about how her spirit addresses his spirit and that
Mhm.
they will like stand at God's feet as equals. And I think that can also be tied into this idea that they are of the same kind of romantic mind and they have the same feelings when in this space.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just every part of this, I sent you a picture when I was reading this section of my pages, and I try really, really hard to be a sparse highlighter so that I actually have parts that I can actually like share and read and put in my notes. I'm looking at it, I think it's 6 pages. I highlighted 90 to 95% of what's
Amazing.
said because it's so amazing. Like I know we talked about, I literally just said these special gems of these little extra things that we get. this is an incredible chapter. This
Yeah.
proposal is an incredible scene. I would have punched him in the face well before he got to propose to me because he annoys the shit out of me before he actually proposes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think everything they say to each other is so beautiful and so wonderful. And like, I'm a big fan of poetic language. I think most of our Jane Eyre fans are that way. I know some people prefer, like, that's not how people talk to each other. I don't care. I love this. Like, I love the metaphors that they're pushing at each other. I love the moment where I think we so often see Jane's strength as this internal thing. And we talk about how hard that is to portray in these adaptions where we know Jane's strong because we live in her head with her,
Mm-hmm.
where adult Jane doesn't express that externally as much because she's been through these situations that have really changed the way she expresses that passion. I like that when we see that passion kind of come out of her,
Mm-hmm.
that she's sobbing at one point. Like, it talks about her sobbing,
Mm-hmm.
and she's like trying to keep that emotion down because she's trying to keep the grief and the sadness down,
Mm-hmm.
but she lets him have the anger because
He deserves it.
Deserves it in this
Yeah.
scene. He for sure deserves it.
Yes. I love, and I've said it before when talking about other adaptions of this, that when he finally reveals all and he expects her to fall into his arms, she's like, no, you are playing a joke on me because that's what you do. You play jokes and you play games, and I'm not going to be made a fool of, which is a detail about Jane that I really started to analyze later on in the story. And I think that is something that's clear here too, is I think Jane, she doesn't want to be laughed at and she doesn't want to be tricked or taken advantage of. And I think I think that's partially where it comes from, her always kind of challenging him and pushing him back. So I appreciate that in her. And I love the hoops she makes him jump through in this moment to prove that he's being truthful here, you know, like swearing that oath and studying his face in the moonlight and all of this stuff. But I think some of the lines that he says makes me very happy when he also talks about equality. I also made a note because there's several times during the proposal where Jane, in reference to Blanche, says, you know, the impediment is in the shape of your bride. You've placed it before me. And he's like, I have no bride and all this other stuff. I feel like that's a wonderful little bit of unintentional salt in the wound. Like, he knows he's married and has a wife, and Jane is using this language to refer to what she thinks is his fiance, but to like be trying to propose to the girl you love into like sneaky bigamy and have her be like, you have a bride. And I would just be like, shit, she knows. It's like, he's like, no, I'm just going to keep going. Fake it till you make it, Rochester.
There's another reference later in this section that we read where I literally wrote on the page, dude, how did you keep this secret for so long? You suck at this. He's so bad at it. He's so bad at keeping this a secret. He makes references to it constantly. How has he not been caught?
Oh my.
But I really think there's a few of the classic lines that are in this chapter that like we have to read. Like, I don't know how we don't read them.
Yes. Go for it. You take the first one.
Thank you. The first one that I have here is, do you think that because I am poor, obscure, plain, and little, that I am soulless and heartless? You think wrong. I have as much soul as you and and full as much heart. If God had gifted me with some beauty and wealth, I should make it as hard for you to leave me as it is now for me to leave you.
Amazing. Ugh. Amazing.
And I think what an incredible way to lay out these kind of two really critical pieces of Jane, right? Like, it's the external story about her that she is not good enough for him. That is what everyone in this society would think. And the story that she honestly tells herself, right? Like, I think we know Jane doesn't value beauty and she doesn't value wealth. And like, we see that over and over again. These aren't the things that she finds important, but just like that, like it's one of those things that so holds true now, where something that is valued that much in society, even if you know for your own internal monologue, you know for yourself that that's not where your value lies. When you're in positions like this, where you want something or someone so badly, and you think that the thing preventing you from getting that is these external things.
Yeah.
Of course you would want those. And of course you would say that. And for him to be there to immediately be like, No, you're all the things that you value are the things that I value. And I see those in you and I love you for them.
Yeah, exactly. And I love too that she says, like literally in the next line, I'm not talking to you now through the medium of custom, conventionalities, nor even of mortal flesh. Because I love that in this moment, they're finally casting aside the thing that I think they both hate, him especially, is this restriction of society to have to like you have to go through these hoops. I think he thinks that's kind of why he had to play these games because he couldn't just go up to Jane and be like, "Hey, I see in you what I have in me. I like it. I like you. Let's run away together." Like he can't just do
Mhm.
that. So he had to do this whole elaborate thing. And so I love that she in that moment is also like, "Yeah, fuck it. Like here's what I feel. Like I'm just saying it now." Like it's like,
Yeah.
"Yay, finally. We can finally talk."
And I think then we get the next the classic, probably the most quoted if Instagram is to be trusted, which is as he sort of literally is, and throughout this whole thing, he's literally trying to hold her in his arms. And she says, I am no bird and no net ensnares me. I'm a free human being with an independent will, which now I exert to leave you. And he's like, no.
There is a moment later in this section of our reading for today where she also kind of reinserts that will to
Mm,
leave. And I think that's very intense that that shows up several times. I think
mm,
that's a thing for her. She's like, if I find myself in a bad situation, I leave it. She did that when she left Gateshead, when she was over it. She did that when she left her bad
Lowood.
school, Lowood. Yep. She's like, I don't want to be a teacher anymore. I'm getting out of here. Then she
Mhm.
did it when she's like, no, this guy who I'm in love with is teasing me and making me think that he loves me when he doesn't. I don't stand for that, so I'm gonna leave. And then again, obviously, when she finds out the big bad secret, she's like, what can I do? I'm going to leave this bad situation. It's what Jane does. She gets herself out of there. So
Well, and if you think about it, when she was a child and she was literally trapped in this bad situation, her escape was reading books. So
mhm.
it wasn't the ability to physically leave, but the books that she was drawn to, the books that she tells us about, are the ones where they're all about far off places. So
Yes.
that was probably her daydream, and her imagination took her to these far off places. And you start telling yourself this story when you're young that if I could, I would just go. I would
Mhm.
just go off to one of these islands. I would just get out of here and I would be somewhere else. And then every opportunity that she has where she comes across an obstacle that is too big to conquer, she goes, I'm getting out of here. This is what I'm
Yeah.
going to do. And it works out perfectly fine. And she definitely would have survived if she hadn't stumbled into her cousins on the moor. Um,
How many of us as kids threatened our parents that we would run away slash actually attempted to do so?
a suitcase, a bag with a teddy bear, classic.
Yep. It's like I got my bag full of Barbies and a little thing of Cheetos. I'm on my own,
I
baby.
made it to the mailbox and suddenly this feels pretty scary, huh? Further than the mailbox, we got to give her that.
Hey, yes, she did. One of my all time favorite lines from this whole scene is when she's finally accepted him and he says, come to me entirely now, said he, and added in his deepest tone, speaking in my ear as his cheek was laid on mine, make my happiness. I will make yours. I think that's a beautiful thing to say when talking about spending the rest of your life with someone. Like, wow, I love it.
Yeah, Piper, just really quick, take out your headphones. Sam, just like if you're taking note, you guys are going to get married here in the next year or so. And just like something to write down. Anyway, you're welcome. Piper, come back to the podcast.
Oh, I'm back. Hi.
But yeah, I think that that is a beautiful one. And then I think an incredibly important line right after this, which I do wonder what Jane thought about this when he's like, I love you and we're going to be married and it's going to be great. And my happiness and all these things are you now and all this stuff. And then immediately after this, this would be such a red flag for me. God pardon me and a man meddle not with me. I have her and I will hold her.
Mhm.
Damn, dude, like that's hot. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like
Yeah.
that's you're gonna fight God and everyone except for the fact that why? Like she immediately addresses like there's not gonna be a problem.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna, people wouldn't like, but why would, here's the thing, girl, if you did have family, Why would they have a problem with this?
Yeah, he's a wealthy man, a landowner. Like everything should be fine, right? Except for that weird woman that he employs who sometimes tries to burn him alive.
And bit that one guy one time.
Yeah, like bit him one time. Whatever. Attic monsters, they happen.
He's Rochester said he had it handled. I have no reason not to believe him.
Can't wait to get married into this household, right?
It's gonna be, listen, he promises her later that a year and a day from now he is gonna explain.
Oh my God. That would make me angry as heck. If I was like, Sam, what is your big secret? And he's like, I'll tell you in a year and a day. I'd be like, no, I'm leaving.
You have to legally bind your life to mine and do it for a year and a day so that we ding dang done committed this crime together for a long time.
Mhm.
And then I'll tell you about it.
So they smooch, they run through the rain. God decides to show that he doesn't like bigamy and he smites the tree under which they had made their proposal. And like literally Rochester, it's like, God cannot keep her from me. And God's like, zap.
Do you wanna bet? Because I've already got some wheels in motion, sir.
Mhm, yeah. So amazing. I love that Miss Fairfax does a little scandalous peeping and sees them kissing on the stairs, and she's like, "Oh my!"
They scandalized poor Miss Fairfax. My favorite line in this that is just what a little cutie. I literally wrote, "This is too cute." Is the moment the storm is happening. They're back inside. The storm is happening. She's having some trouble sleeping. But Rochester had came thrice to my door in the course of it and asked if I was safe and tranquil. That's
Very
so
sweet.
cute.
Very sweet. Though, if not to diminish the cuteness of that scene, because I think that is absolutely adorable and I love reading it that way.
Don't take this away from me.
No, I'm only going to add a layer of sexiness to it. Because we know that when she saved him from the bed, we interpret it as him being like, don't you want to stay and like fool around and stuff? And so they just like a few hours earlier were macking like in the rain, super hot and sexy. I think, yes, he definitely went to check on her because of the spooky storm, but I would not be surprised at all if he also was like, are you sure maybe I should stay with you and like and snuggle with you and give you a million kisses to kiss away the spooky storm? Wouldn't that be great? And she's like, goodbye, clothes. And he's like, damn it. I just want to snuggle with you in a romantic and sexy way.
Romantic and sexy.
Sexy snugs.
I think we could probably make a pretty long list of the situations where Rochester's like, do you want to maybe, we could have sex. Do you want to have sex?
He's like, look at that hay bale over there, Jane. Looks kind of like a bed to me.
But I think like literally like when they're doing the money flirting, like and she's trapped in that room with him and he's like very fine with it and like totally like not gonna pressure her to do anything. He's like, how do people say goodbye, Jane? I've never seen people say goodbye. What's one of the ways people do it?
There are so many moments, one of which, if I may jump a little into their adorable scene that they shared together the next day, just because it's very on topic for this.
This is my favorite chapter. I loved almost every second of this chapter.
Yay! Okay, so just one line and then we can dissect everything. But there's this part where, you know, he's fawning over her and he's telling her all these things about how he's going to treat her as a queen and all this wonderful stuff. And she's like, yet after all, as a friend and companion, I hope never to become quite distasteful to my dear master. Because she's like, oh, you may love me now, but I read in romance books that love only stays for a little bit and then you'll just think of me as a buddy. And I think the way he responds to this, I see him as like sitting very, very close to her on this couch. And I see him being like, first of all, appalled. He's like, you think I'm going to not be obsessed with you for the rest of my life? And he says, distasteful and like you again? I think I shall like you again and yet again. And I will make you confess I do not only like, but love you with truth, fervor, consistency. Like I see him there just like being like, baby, I am going to show you how much I love you. I read that as very sexy. So
that was a way too sexy, Piper. I think I apologize for our listeners. This should have a too sexy warning. We definitely got to put an explicit warning on this one because we did swear a lot.
Yes.
But dang. That was too, I'm sorry for our listeners who are now in love with Piper.
You're welcome. I will accept your fan mail. You can send me your DMs at my Instagram.
Just know that I run the Earbuds Instagram. So please request Piper's contact information before sending your super sexually explicit messages. Because I don't want to be a carrier pigeon for people who want to send Piper super sexually explicit messages.
I'm just going to get a bunch of messages from Sam.
I know, I was going to say, I'm like, I'm just imagining Sam being like, I'm going to send DMs to the Instagram. And being like, please stop. You live in the same house as her. Go to the next room.
Amazing. Okay, Lillian, tell me about your favorite chapter.
Oh, I love all of it. It's so good. Literally, I wrote from the first paragraph, like when she wakes up the next morning, she's describing herself. And it's one of the first times that we see her describe herself as this beautiful thing. Like she's fixing her hair and things like that. But like she describes herself as beautiful, and love made her beautiful. Like she talks about that so much, where she starts to see beauty in people and places and things as she starts to get this emotional connection with them. We see that throughout the story. But the fact that in being loved in return, she sees that beauty in herself. Dang, girl.
Yeah.
That's cute.
It's so cute. And I loved that there was moments in this that I haven't seen in adaptations before, like her going out and giving like half of her entire savings to this poor person who comes by, and she's like, I needed to share my joy with everybody. And it's things like that. Like I love that she was out and about and doing stuff before she, comes and sees him again.
And you and I have talked about how much we love the cutie little family moments with Adele and him, and the fact that he they go shopping together, and he is just telling Adele all these fairy stories, and the way that he's talking to her, if you read that from in a monotone, he sounds like an asshole, but I really think that he's teasing her the whole time. It's like, no, I'm taking her, mademoiselle. We're going to the moon. And Adele's like, she will get hungry on the moon. You should probably leave her here. And then he's like, no, here's my plan for that. It's like, okay, well, she's going to get cold on the moon, so you should probably leave her here. He was going to put her next to one of the little volcanoes. She's not going to be comfortable there. Plus, what's she going to do about clothes? And he was, I'm going to make them out of clouds. Don't be crazy. I thought this all the way through, Adele.
It is so dang cute. And I can just see Jane just trying to hold back her laughter, watching this little interaction.
Oh, and just just the joy, how joy can be infectious like that.
Yeah.
That everybody's doing cute things. It's just so cute.
I have to mention before we go further into the shopping spree montage, there's so many moments in that interaction where I kind of had that section of him being all sexy and flirty, where he is talking about. Oh, you can hear the cat? Yeah, she's excited too.
She also thinks this is her favorite chapter.
Because before there's always been this power imbalance. And here, when he's talking about his love for her, he talks about how he says, you master me, you seem to submit. There's this kind of duality of that. I am influenced, conquered, and the influence is sweeter than I can express, and the conquest I undergo has a witchery beyond any triumph I can win. And as he says this, she's laughing at him. And then later she comes back with something that I think is rather spicy. She's like, why not, sir? You've just been telling me how much you like to be conquered and how pleasant over persuasion is to you. And all of this stuff, I'm like, damn, Jane. Yeah, let him have it.
Honestly, okay, if you don't like spicy things, skip forward a minute. I bet Rochester likes to be domed. I bet he wants Jane to dom him.
Totally, he does. Yes. They would have some whack role play sessions.
Yeah. He's very into it when she says that.
Yes. The thing that it made me think of, I don't know, did you ever watch more than once Labyrinth?
No, I watched it at a lot of sleepovers and fell asleep when we were at your house.
It is pretty long, but the very last scene is Jareth the Goblin King, played by David Bowie, is confronting Jennifer Connelly, a teenage girl. And it's kind of this is it a romance? Is it not? Gray is kind of weird. But he has this line, because he's trying to defeat her in this big game that he's been playing, where he says, all I ask is that you love me, fear me, do as I say, and I will be your slave. And it's the same kind of duality duality that I see in Rochester here of he's like, you master me, but also I am master here, ha ha ha, and all this stuff. And they would have a lot of fun, I'm sure.
Yes, I completely see that. And this is the chapter where I literally wrote, "Stop being so sketchy. How did you keep this a secret for so long?" Because literally when he's like, that's when Jane says to him, like, "Hey, I just have like one question for you that I need you to answer." And he immediately goes, "What? What's your question? What do you need me to answer?" "Oh my God, Jane, please just tell me what your question is." And she's like, "Why did you try to convince me like Blanche?" She goes, "Oh," he literally responds, "Is that all? Thank God it was no worse."
I know he's not subtle. I
Because
think,
I immediately would have been like, "I've changed my mind. What was worse?"
yeah, excuse me, what were you about to say, sir?
Just start confessing crimes. I'll let you know when you get to it.
Amazing. It makes me think of when she first saves him and he's all like thinking that the game is up and he's like, "You saw someone in the hallway?" And she's like, "Yeah, I think it was Grace." He's like, "Whoosh." Yeah,
Yep.
that was probably it.
That was 100% it. Like, because I think I've got to imagine what I really think it probably is, because we do find out later in this section that
Mhm,
he's like, "You've probably heard rumors of a mad woman who lives at Thornfield,"
mhm,
which makes sense.
mhm.
Because he sucks at keeping this a secret. So he probably does, like, people probably do find out about it all the time. Like, the servants know. So, like,
Yeah,
he probably is just like, but he doesn't clarify what it is because he didn't have to, because anyone who
right.
finds out is beneath him. Ugh. And so I think that that's probably in other situations, he's just not used to having to hide it quite this well.
Right.
And so when he doesn't want to lie to Jane more than he has to, although he does so much so explicitly in this section.
Mhm,
It is the tough part about this section of the book is I want to just sit in the warm fuzzy feelings,
mhm.
but he says some of the most romantic things. He refers to them like they're these equals, all of these things. And yet he lies to her constantly and
Yes.
explicitly, not
Yes.
misleading her, not a truth, a lie by omission. She asks him explicit questions, and we'll see that more in a little bit. And
Mhm,
he lies to her face about it.
mhm. I almost wonder because one of my next notes kind of plays into where this is making my train of thought go. So we talk about how it seems as if he's really bad at like, covering this up and that it should be obvious to Jane that there's something more going on. I think she does know those things. I think her joy
Mm.
in this moment is kind of pushing it out of her mind. I mean, she's had this freaky dream for 7 nights of a wailing baby and all this other stuff. And it's like, well, that's a pretty bad omen. Maybe my subconscious is trying to tell me something. Like every time my fiance gives me shifty eyes if I mention something that he doesn't quite like. Because there's the note that I made is when they're done with their shopping spree and she's uncomfy with how he wants to dress her up like a doll, she then has the thought where she's like, I'm going to write to my uncle and then maybe I can get an inheritance and have my own independence. And that way I won't have to, like, then maybe he won't shower me so much or I won't have to be dependent
Mhm.
on his treating me like a doll and these whims. And I wonder if that's almost also partially her, like, subconscious being like, maybe everything isn't as perfect as I think it is. And I should have a backup plan just in case this happily ever after is too good to be true.
Yeah, I think that's a super fair read, and we see that a lot in that night before her wedding, and like the way that she feels in the next chapter, and we can talk about that a lot more, but I think that's absolutely a fair read. I do think she sees parts of it, and I
Mhm.
think that is it's one of those things where, like, I don't know which one bothers me more, that he is so explicitly lying to her or that she is deferring to him and allowing him to do that, because we see her strength in so many places,
Yeah.
but then in this space, when she just finds it acceptable that he's keeping very clearly a huge secret from her.
Yes.
One other thing I want to talk about in this section, and I think that's it then on this chapter, although I did write cute on every page, is just the moment with Mrs. Fairfax when Jane is talking to her, and she
Mhm.
has this line that I do have marked down here where it's, And Jane does get a little upset with this tiny bit of reality being injected into her life, which I do like that Mrs. Fairfax at least tries to kind of look out for her. But
Mhm.
it's try to keep Mr. Rochester at a distance and distrust him yourself as well as him. Gentlemen in his station are not accustomed to marrying their governesses, which there's a lot of layers to that statement.
Mhm.
But I think not most importantly, it's do not sleep with him until he marries you,
Mm.
because this could be him. I don't think he would do this, but guys like this would absolutely lie to their governess about marrying her to get her into bed. So just make sure that that's not what's happening here, you sweet little Bane.
Yeah, no, that's a great read of that. I wasn't really seeing it that way, but I like that that would be the kind of advice that she offers. Yeah, there's so much there. It makes me, because I do believe that she doesn't know that the woman in the house is a wife. I think that is a secret from her, but there is definitely all these reasons to be cautious and nervous about this
Mhm.
stuff. So,
Yeah. And I think Mrs. Fairfax has obviously, I mean, she's talked about the idea that and I think she probably does, right, to an extent, but the
mhm,
fact that she's related to him
mhm,
and she would never use that to her advantage, and she would never like play off of that in order to get special treatment or whatever it is. And the fact that she's been so lonely because she won't talk to the other servants because it's outside of her social norm,
mhm.
it's outside of what's expected of her in her role. So I do think that Mrs. Fairfax is one of those people who really follows these social rules and these social structures.
Mhm.
And at the very like you so often see women enforcing stereotypes for women more than other people because they have lived within these constraints. And
Yeah.
so if you don't have to, then maybe they never had to. And then what have they been doing with their life? And I
Mhm.
don't think Mrs. Fairfax is going quite that far. I think she's a little bit more understanding with Jane than that. But you do see like her being like, hey, here's how to, at a minimum, you need to protect yourself. I'm
Yeah.
surprised and I'm not unhappy for you, but I'm not super excited for you because I'm worried.
Yeah. I think I like, as much as that is kind of a rainy cloud on Jane's happiness, it is great that she, whether she knows it or not, has an ally in Fairfax.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think it's the kind of thing where, again, it's a moment like this where we're reminded that she's not 25, she's 18, 19. And she's
Mhm.
like, I met this guy and he's my boss and we're going to get married. And you're like, ooh, you should maybe date for 5 years at least and then maybe get married and find out if there's a woman in the attic. Like,
Like
don't
you
run into
should if did he so he okay, so you just told me he said what to you again?
this.
That he's going to tell you his secret a year and a day after you get married. I would just say, like, just as a quick, like, before you are legally bound to him, let's check.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll ask him. You know what? You go sit and you sit in that bridal suite, honey. You're gonna have the best Rochester. I swear to God, what's your secret?
Yeah, seriously.
And I
Which,
think we're going to see this. We haven't actually read where we ended this section was her knowing the truth. And we're going to talk about that. But I think that this is sort of laying those seeds to me for one of the questions that we're going to have answered shortly, which is why would she just go wandering off on the moors and lose all of her belongings and spend all of her money and get just completely lost
mhm.
versus asking Fairfax for help versus writing to her uncle versus she could have gone like she does in the 43. She could have gone back and stayed with Bessie for a bit. Bessie absolutely would have taken her in. One of her cousins would have. They suck, but you're not homeless.
Right.
Like, and instead she just we see a little peek into that. Like she's not thinking clearly and she's
Mhm.
18.
Yeah,
Like, anyway,
it's a lot.
but I think this is an example of that for sure.
So we get this moment that I can't recall seeing in an adaptation except for in the web series version, where he
Mm.
like sings for her. Because in the web series version, he sits down with a guitar, and I remember watching that, and I'm like, "Oh, this is so cringe." And then, but here he is in the novel, like, but in this version, at least, I think it's super cute that she's like, "Play some music for me." Where leading up to this point, she's been kind of prickly towards him. And I think, again, it is this element of there's something in her subconscious, and maybe partially this advice from Fairfax of saying, be careful. Like, and
Mm.
again, this is kind of where my main notes fell from these things of I think Jane is afraid to be changed by falling too much into this love and becoming maybe the doll that he wants to make her or that he sees her as. And I think she's trying really hard to hold on to her independence, her challenging nature that he so loves. And it's kind of this little defense that she puts up. And so when she does ask him to sing for her, he's like, wow, but you've been so prickly towards me. But yeah, if you really want to hear me sing, she's like, I like your voice. And I love that at first he's like, accompany me. And she's like, bang, bang, bang. He's like, scoot over. Like, I will do it. And then sings this little song while she sits in the window. It's very interesting the way that he wants instantly, I think, to treat her like they're on their honeymoon. And she's like, we're not married yet. We gotta just keep doing what we were doing. I'm still your governess. You're still paying me a salary. Like, it's very respectable.
Yeah. And I think that that moment, this is that line that I was remembering earlier when we were talking about Twilight, where these are the moments that she allows them to have over this month before they're married, which is Twilight, the hour of romance, where he is allowed to call to her when he normally would have before. She's not going to start breaking all of these rules until they've actually changed her station by her being able to marry him. But she'll still spend time with him during the times of day when they would have previously. And those times are now changed because they both know that they're in love with each other, which is very cute.
Agreed.
Anyway, and then the book ends.
The end, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming. The podcast is over. Please tip your waiters.
Also, tell your waiters that we had terrible service. They never brought me any treats.
So we get more dreams. This is a very dream heavy section. She dreams, I'm trying to remember the first one. Simply, I think that she's carrying this child that is too sick to walk, and Rochester is somewhere far ahead and she loses him in a storm.
And he keeps getting further and further away from him and she can never get to him.
Yeah. And then she dreams, like literally gets a premonition of the future that Thornfield has burned down. It's a ruin. And she's still carrying this child and she's scrambling up over the walls of what used to be this grand house. And she sees him in the distance. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and she like slips, like the wall crumbles beneath her and she falls, again, in the pursuit of the man that she loves. And also, oh boy, my favorite part from this whole section here. Hang on, I'm pulling it up. Bear with me, ladies and gentlemen. She's been alone the first night, which is when the spooky things happens. And now it's like the second day and she is kind of fitful waiting for him to come back. And she's wandering outside, even though it's all windy and rainy. And she goes again to see the tree that was blasted by lightning. And I love how this tree is the two of them. I'm going to read this passage. It's so good. And I hope I don't stumble over these words, but though community of vitality was destroyed, the sap could flow no more. Their great boughs on each side were dead, and next winter's tempest would be sure to fell one or both to earth. As yet, however, they might be said to form one tree, a ruin, but an entire ruin. You did right to hold fast to each other, I said, as if the monster splinters were living things and could hear me. I think, scathed as you look, and charred and scorched, there must be a little sense of life in you yet. And it's her and Rochester, what they will become. And I think, like, kind of what I was jotting down about this is they are broken and charred, and yet they are connected by this shared trauma. And it's awesome.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful idea. I think that it's that idea that these two people who have all of this baggage and all of these bad things that have happened to them in the past, that it broke parts of them and they're different. I don't really love the idea of being like, you're broken, shattered, and ruined. But like, I see what, like, that's not to dissuade the metaphor. I just don't like it when people think of themselves that way.
Right.
But I think that idea that despite having gone through this traumatic thing, and in fact, in some ways because of it, that's part of what draws them together and what makes them potentially perfect for each other. And I think in a world where they don't have some of these burdens that they have at this time of society, they could hold each other up and stay there, and that winter storm wouldn't take them away. But unfortunately, they don't live in that time and they are stuck in these societal kind of constructs. And so they do have to sort of stay there. But yeah, absolutely. That was a really beautiful, beautiful section within that. And I think there's probably so many other pieces in these long descriptions of nature that I just go, yes, it's a tree. We get it. That I'm sure I'm missing. So if there's any other metaphors like that that we did not talk about in here that is one of your favorites or one that you just are aware of, please tell us about them. We love hearing about the metaphors. Piper is obviously way better at picking up on them than I am, but I'm sure some of our listeners who have spent more time with this book than we have are aware of some that we have missed.
Yes, please share, and maybe we'll read them on air, on Jane Eyre. One thing that I loved that came next, that I would love to see in an adaptation, which I have not seen yet, is in this storm, she runs out to him, and once again, like their first meeting, he comes on horseback, Pilot is riding behind him, and he pulls her up into the saddle with him, and she's like sitting there. I picture like kind of on his lap or in front of him, and there they kind of hold each other, and he's like concerned. He's like, what has scared you so? And he like carries her that way as they ride back to the house, and I just think that's very romantic.
So I don't remember this in enough detail, but I have used the picture more than once on our social. So I don't know if this was a deleted scene or maybe like a promotional photo or what, but there is a scene of Timothy Dalton on a horse with Jane actress on a horse, and he's holding her like that because she is so much smaller than him, so they can do that. But that's what I was picturing during this scene, was like her just being like, hi,
I'm so
a bad day. I need a cuddle.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Lillian, because I've seen you post that picture before, and I have obsessively watched the 80s version, and that's not in it. And so I'm like, when does this happen? Give it to us now. Like, I need to see it.
I'm just gonna figure out a way to get back in time just to get this scene.
Yeah, I'll be like, hey, you,
She'd
get
be like,
that off of the editing floor and put it back in the movie.
could I invest in Apple and become wealthy? Of course. Could I avert some historic tragedy? Absolutely. What are we gonna do? We're gonna get that scene from Jane Eyre 1983. Timothy Dalton did something hot and you didn't give it to me.
So, how do you feel about him listening to what happened with the whole tearing of the veil and then his explanation?
I have lots of notes in my book. The only note I put in my notes document for this is fuck Rochester in this whole chapter. You suck, dude. You suck. I hate it so much. I really, really, really hate it. I understand why they have often cut this way she explicitly asks about it out of adaptions, because it is so irredeemable to me. The idea that she is saying, I am feeling anxious. I am feeling overwhelmed. I feel like there's something I don't understand happening. All of my dreams are trying to tell me something. Here's this whole story about Thornfield being in ruin. Like, that's a subtext thing in her dream. You're out of my reach. Thornfield is going to be in ruins. And then this person I've never seen before was in my room and ripped my veil. And I need you to tell me what's happening, because I'm so upset, and I need you to tell me what's happening. And he goes, that's crazy. And I'm like, is that crazy? Now tell me the truth, sir. Did you do this to Bertha? I literally, the way I label, I have little Post-its, and someday I'll read all of them for you guys. But I label the different sections of like important moments that I want to be able to flip back to. I labeled this as gaslighting 101, you dick.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely justified to feel this way. I think it's the worst that he treats her so far, is this like dismissing her fears and kind of twisting her reality, being like, no, what you saw was like a goblin form of a dream. It was Grace. Like, he's just like being like, nope, you're wrong. Don't trust your senses. Trust me. And it's like, no, Rochester, why? Especially when you know how dangerous this is. And like the one thing he does kind of okay is that he like tells her to go and like sleep with Adele so that she's safe the next night. But also, no, like, I wish that Jane had more ability to confront him more than this. Because I think at this point, she's still, as she's been saying for this last month of their engagement, she's like, I want to keep going as we were. You are my employer. I am your employee. And so I don't think she thinks she's in the position yet. She is not yet the lady of Thornfield to say, no, this woman is not allowed in our house. Even if, first of all, you're fucking lying. So you suck. But second of all, even if your lie was true, you can't just let this person be here and all this other stuff. But she's in no position to question or make demands or do anything. So she just goes along with it.
And to me, every other moment, while I've disagreed with it and thought what he did wasn't okay, it's been more understandable. And I could justify this. I can justify almost anything. You want me to justify murder? I'll do that. Like, but that doesn't mean it's right. Like, I feel like the way that we start with Rochester lying to her, like, we've talked about that idea of like, he realizes that he's in love with her. He realizes that he wants her as more than a mistress and as more as than these women that he's had since bringing Bertha back to Thornfield. And so he starts to concoct this plan, and each step of that plan, it gets crazier and crazier, but each step feels so justifiable. Lying to her feels justifiable because she's the one who says the moral weight of this should be on you. So keeping that as a secret and like that lie of omission, I don't like it. I don't agree, but it's justifiable up until the point where she explicitly says to him, I am scared. What is happening?
Yeah.
And he, instead of it, like, he could even have done something like that. You're so right. That is scary. We're going to figure out what this is. Like, but the way that he lies to her in this instance, like the way that he lies to her here is not just to tell her, I don't know what's happening, but to tell her you're wrong. And this is in your head.
Yeah. No.
Ugh.
It's bad. And it's just this like it shows his weakness here too, because he's not strong enough to do something better. But I think he's simply just kind of scrambling. He's like, tomorrow we'll be wed, and then I don't have to worry about it anymore because then she'll be mine. And then it almost feels more like an actual trap, which is not great. Yep. So bad news bears on all counts there.
Here's a question that I have that we probably won't really be able to answer, but it's something that I was questioning a lot through this section before we talk about the actual wedding. What do you think Jane would have done if he had come clean in this moment?
That's a good question. If I was writing a fan fiction answer to that, I think they would talk throughout the night. If he in this moment spoke to her and told her the truth to like some extent or the whole extent, I think there'd be a very, 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 very long discussion of asking all kinds of questions and figuring everything out. But I don't think that she could possibly stay by any means, but maybe in the very least, she would think better of him. I don't know. That's a very hard question.
I don't think she would have run away. And we're going to talk here in a minute about her reaction, like her internal reaction to what it is that he's done, which is something that we don't get to this level of detail in any of the adaptions. But I feel like at the very least, I don't think she would have married him the next day. I think he's right in that he would lose that.
Yes.
But I think that she would have been in a much better position. I don't think she would have run off into the moors and gotten lost and whatever. I think she probably would have like you said, talked it through and see what they could do about it and come up with a plan where maybe she goes, I can't be here. I can't do any of these things. Maybe I should go to Ireland. Right. Like, but I believe that they would have stayed in touch. And I believe that when the fire happened, she would have been right back there. Like, I don't know exactly what that would be, but it's something that rolls around in my head. So another one for our listeners, if you have your theory of what Jane would have done, if whether it was this moment or another moment, if Rochester had revealed the truth to her, I'm very curious as to what people think about that.
Yes, please write us airbuds at gmail.com. Tell us your theories.
Or any of our social.
So it's time for a wedding, Lillian. And the way that I want to kick off talking about this section. So right before we were recording this, I popped onto Facebook and I got a Facebook memory of a status that I posted 9 years ago on August 12th, 2013. And it's a dream that I had that I wrote down because I am a big fan of dreams and trying to interpret them. And when I have very vivid ones, I try to share them with people to get like other people's insights. And this one was oddly relevant. So let me just read you this post here that I wrote 9 years ago on this day. It
Ooh.
said, I had a weird dream last night about getting married. At the end of the ceremony, I was told I had to submerge myself in a pool of water. But after I did, someone pushed my head under so that by the time I got up, all of my hair was plastered in a matted veil in front of my face. I was then pushed up the aisle and couldn't get my hair out of my face before I said I do. By the time I had, the man I had just agreed to devote the rest of my life to turned out to be some old bearded man who looked more like a rabbi than a groom. And I said, this is very strange and rather upsetting, but the real question is, what does it mean? So 9 years ago, I was dreaming about someone getting trapped in a weird marriage, and now we're talking about the same thing. So life is a funny thing, don't you think?
Yeah. Oh my God. There's so many things to unpack there. If you spent your time reading Jane Eyre, becoming an expert on dream metaphors, please send the meaning of Piper's dream from 9 years ago to us at airbuds@gmail.com. We need to crowdsource this one because I think that you were predicting this moment. That was the universe telling you, you should start a Jane Eyre podcast. I think it'd be great.
It's like, you don't know this name yet, but soon you will. Jane Eyre.
But
That's
a name you will recognize is Lillian. Lillian and Jane. And you're like, Lily, do you know a Jane? We both are just like little goobers. We're like, no, I knew
what's
that.
going on? So Jane puts on her wedding dress. Rochester is impatient. He's making sure that the carriage is packed and the bags are ready. And he wrote these cute little things on her trunks that are Mrs. Jane Eyre Rochester because he's been practicing it forever and ever. Then he grabs her by the hand and walks so fast that on her tiny, tiny little legs, she gets out of breath by the time they're at the church. And he's like, oops, sorry, gotta calm down. Just don't want anyone to interrupt our wedding.
Totally normal. You know how all grooms are terrified that somebody's going to take his bride away? Anyway, this is a normal wedding for normal reasons. Nobody's coming with us. It's going to be fine.
It's going to be totally fine. And I love that Jane notices who are those two suspicious strangers over there in that graveyard? And they go into the church and she's like, who are those two suspicious strangers who followed us into the church for our wedding?
I know. Because we've talked about the fact that I love, I want to say it's one of the 90s ones. It's either 96 or 97 where they have the riding the horse across the field and then shows up and is like, da da da. There it is. I'm at the church and I made it just in the nick of time. That's how I like it. There's something about this that I find endlessly hilarious that the lawyer, because they do this, the 73, I think, is the one that does this most accurately, where he's like, hold on, wait, Mason, wait. He might change his mind. You know how he's been gaslighting this woman for months and months and months, and he's been hiding your sister, his wife, in his attic for years and years. And he's now at a wedding, his wedding, with his soon-to-be wife. I think when the priest says, remember that you're judged by God, he's going to be like, oh my God, totally forgot to mention, I actually can't do this because I am married.
The whole thing was a big prank on Jane to be like, psych.
Frankly, I was so enamored by you, forgot. Not to mention it.
Yeah, so they do that. There's a pause, and he starts to go into the whole, will you take this woman? And then in comes Mr. Lawyer and Richard Dick Mason. And
Rich, you dick, Mr. Dick Mason.
And we have quite the, after the back and forth and all this stuff, I really think it's interesting that she describes that he kind of shudders when that man first speaks. And that's, I think, sort of the end of the hope for Rochester, that he thinks he might get away with it. And so she describes him as kind of like a statue of, he's solid as stone and his expression isn't really revealing anything. And his eyes are full of sparks and fire. And then finally he kind of has that sort of, I kind of picture it as a bit of an outburst. But it's this monologue of, which I think was so interesting, that in the first half of this monologue, he delivers in the church, which I feel so often he takes them to the house and then says a lot of that stuff. So the fact that he says a lot of it right there in the church before taking them to see her is very interesting to me.
I prefer him doing it in the church because it feels so dehumanizing to
Mm,
Bertha
yeah.
to be like, come look at my wife. Now let me tell you about what a fucking bitch and life ruiner she is while she stands
Yes.
next to me.
Oh.
Like that's versus like, hey, this is the situation I was in. This is what's happening. You want to see the truth? Like you want to actually see that she's crazy? Let's go look. Let's go. Let
Mhm.
me go show you what it is that I'm describing here. So
Yeah.
the idea that he starts by being like, yeah, bad news. I do have a wife. She is nuts. Here's the story of how I got stuck with her. Let's go take a look at
Mhm.
at her. And then the parts where he's not doing nearly as much like belittling of Bertha in front of Bertha,
Yeah.
other than just being like,
Mm.
scary gesturing at them. I forgot we were an audio medium and I gestured.
And your eyes went big.
They yes. Just like gesturing at like, look, she's crazy. So I like that he does it in the church. But what is your I know you have thoughts on Mason Rochester, who we see for the first time here.
Oh, so many thoughts. So, this is a character that has made herself known without being seen really until this moment in the story. And wow, when we finally see her, they give her such a description. So, first of all, there are no windows in her room. So, negative 50 points for Rochester of me forgiving you in the treatment of your wife. No windows? That's going to make someone crazy. That alone. Anyway, bad move on your part. You need windows up there. But the way that she is described is so interesting. And I wish we should do an entire episode just kind of talking about her
I think
because
we
the
are going
way
to.
that Jane describes her is that so Bertha is kind of pacing and running around on all fours. And it gives this impression of sort of like a caged, like predator, like a tiger pacing around in a cage that's too small. And when she stands up, she's described as almost like a hyena standing on its hind legs. And she has this very large build and she's athletic. She can grapple with Rochester, who we've known is a large, muscular man. And so I think it's interesting both from tiny little Jane's perspective, because I think one, she's frightened. And so everything about this is scarier to her. But then also, when I'm reading it as not from Jane's idea, I'm like, if this is actually how like she looks, and I'm like, wow, like she sounds like a badass Amazon that probably this little English man didn't know how to handle, apart from locking her up in a room with no windows. So just her size, her scariness. She does go for his throat and she bites his cheek. So we do see the violence. There's no words are spoken. It's interesting that so it's described that he wrestles with her but doesn't strike her, even though Jane assumes that he could. And then he does tie her to a chair, as we've seen in some situations. But it's so interesting now, having read that scene, to then think back on the different portrayals of this and how sometimes he is defending himself and there's a sadness about the situation, and sometimes it seems like he's like, oh, you awful bitch, and it's just like you're so angry at this very like misfortunate person. So it's very interesting to see how different people have taken the details of this scene and then what they've done with it.
Yeah, I think you said sort of all the things that I had to say. I think there's so much to unpack with Bertha. I think it's definitely we've talked about the idea of doing a deep dive into characters, and I think Bertha's like at a minimum we've got to do that
Oh
because I
yeah.
think the layers of metaphor in her character, like how much is her character a person versus a metaphor?
Mm.
What was this like that idea that we've talked about a lot of how much is Bertha crazy and how much did Rochester make her crazy? And was that question that I know you and I have asked a lot,
Mhm.
was that a question that Charlotte Bronte intentionally left in this text? So
Mhm.
I think there's so much to unpack there that it really deserves its own discussion. But I
Yeah.
think what you've described is absolutely, I was somewhat surprised, although in hindsight it makes sense.
Mhm.
This sort of extreme version of Bertha that we've seen, frankly, so rarely in the adaptions that
Yeah.
you and I've talked about as a criticism we've had of adaptions of like, you're just treating her like she's an animal. And it's like, okay, that's the Bertha in the book. And I
Mhm.
think that sort of immoral to just take this character directly out of the book and place her in a movie because she is very clearly a person. I think the way 43 did it, where sort of leaves her up to the imagination, we just see a dark room better than some of the other versions. Like in the 73, we see her tied to a chair. That's
Mhm.
where that is what happens in this.
Mhm.
And it is irredeemable to me to see a Rochester do that. I think the description in the book doesn't feel quite as irredeemable as it would be
Mhm.
if just kind of taking that scene and putting it directly on the screen. But I think it's tough. I think there's so much there, and it's very hard for me to read because it breaks my heart. Like I
Yeah.
can't see it for the frightening monster that like Charlotte Bronte is very clearly describing. I'm not afraid at any point in this. I'm heartbroken.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think the sadness, no, regardless of if you're interpreting it as poor Bertha or poor Rochester, either way, the sadness of the situation is always there. And
Mhm.
that's what has been placed on this house and the people who live in it. And they all have to deal with that. And I think that's what kind of is powerful about this section, whether or not, yes, we talk about the morals of how she's described or how she's perceived versus who she is. But it's just like, here we are, and this sucks, and this is sad, and
Mhm.
this is tragic. And I think Jane sees that, even if maybe her interpretation of this person as kind of animalistic isn't great, she still recognizes she's just like, this is the saddest thing I've ever seen, and it's now the reason why I cannot be with the man that I love.
Mhm.
I think there was a passage here when he's talking about Bertha that made me think of one thing that I did love about the 70s version, the not the miniseries, but the movie.
The one with George C. Scott.
Yes, with George C. Scott.
Mhm.
It's this line where he says, "That is my wife," said he. "Such is the sole conjugal embrace I am ever to know. Such are the endearments which are to solace my leisure hours." It's that section that I think was captured so beautifully and tragically in the George C. Scott version, where after Jane runs away, and then he kind of sits down and he's like, this woman I'm married to will never hold me when I'm sad or try to make me feel better. I am her caregiver and she is lost, and therefore I am lost as well. And I'm glad that that part was kind of in the book there.
Yeah, and I think that that leads so well into my last notes for this section, which is just Jane's emotional response to this. Jane
Yes.
feels it all. Like she is overwhelmed by it. She's heartbroken by it. She has a similar I'm surprised that she has a similar reaction to Rochester that we do. I think we're going to see the actual conversation that we have, but so often we see Janes who are just like, I get it. And I like being able to see her process that by being in her head. I think it would be really hard to get into a movie. You'd probably have to have her have that conversation with a Fairfax or some other character, which would be really, really hard to do. But I do want to say, and I don't want to bum anybody out, specifically Piper, but really anybody reading this. If you've ever wondered what depression feels like inside someone's head, this is what it feels like. That combination of overwhelmed and numbed,
Mhm.
that inability to really engage in anything, including feeling your feelings, because you're just exhausted by the seemingly nothing that has happened.
Yeah.
That is Charlotte Bronte knows someone or experienced some level of depression herself, that is what this is. And it is truly heartbreaking to read such an incredible description of being in someone's head while they're feeling that complex type of emotion.
I completely agree. And yeah, there's so many layers there that it's beautiful, it's quiet, there's a underlying terror and desperation, but it is that kind of moment where she kind of closes up and she, takes off her wedding dress and she puts on her gray frock and she sits down and she like closes her eyes and hides her face. And then it's this interesting metaphor that she describes of laying in a dry riverbed and she can feel like the floodgates have opened and this river is rushing toward her. And I thought that was so beautifully described. uh I also want to mention that there's this line where she addresses some of the faults of the lies that Rochester told her in the previous chapter when she says, real affection he could not have for me. It
Mm-hmm.
had been only fitful passion, because it is this idea where it's like, if he actually loved me, he would have told me the truth. I was
Mm-hmm.
just a skinny fairy girl that he thought would be fun compared to the mad woman in his attic. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe he doesn't actually love me at all. And that sadness is awful.
Yeah. And while I don't believe that that's true for Rochester, and I
Yeah.
think we will see more of that from his character in these coming chapters, I will say in life, men that I've met who have this manic pixie dream girl idea of who this woman is supposed to be and have built, I've had an experience where a man built me up as a caricature of myself as opposed to a human being who's three
Mhm.
dimensional. He could be in love with the idea, not with the
Yeah.
person. And everyone, specifically our amazing listeners, deserves someone who loves them as a person.
Yeah.
So don't accept Rochester love for yourself in life is a really important part. Although that's not, we're going to talk about how cute he is. And I still think it's cute. But one last piece I have here, which is just a bit of that kind of passage I referenced of the experience we have in her head, is right towards the end of that chapter. We see she's been describing all of these things and all the complex and competing feelings that she has, and like not even really being able to process what it is that's happening. And it says, these words went wandering up and down my rayless mind as something that should be whispered, but no energy was found to express them. Be not far from me, for trouble is near. There is none to help. So just that isolating, can't like, I can't even feel this
Mhm.
because I can hear and think and have all of these ideas of but no logic can come out of it, no conclusion. I can't process any of this because it's too much and not enough, and the only solution is my brain and body are going to shut down.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's what happens, and it's so sad. Damn
Which
it, Charlotte, for being such a good writer.
I mean, we've talked even in this episode about like, you have this network. Why would you go out in the moors by yourself? That's why. It's right there
Mm-hmm.
on the page.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, Jane, you broke our heart. We're going to end on a happier note because we're going to talk about something very, very exciting.
Yes, we are. Yes. Let's talk about it.
So we have known for a while now and have recorded a while ago something
Mhm.
that both Piper and I are so excited to be able to share with you guys. So we had an opportunity to read an advanced copy of and interview the author of Reluctant Immortals, which is an incredible book that comes out. It'll be next week when you guys are listening to this. So the 23rd of August is when that book comes out. It is a book that relates really directly to what it is that we're talking about here, with the idea of maybe Bertha's not crazy, maybe Rochester locked her in an attic. So
Mhm.
it takes Bertha and Lucy from
Dracula.
Dracula and makes them immortal and brings them to the late 60s in California, and shenanigans ensue.
Shenanigans do, in fact, ensue. They are pursued by their evil ex boyfriends, Dracula and Rochester. And it's a very interesting take of, this character that, as we've said here, doesn't really get a voice of her own. So if you want to check out this very groovy and spooky girl adventure, then you need to check out Reluctant Immortals. But next week's episode, we will share our thoughts along with a very special interview with the author herself, Gwendolyn Kist, I believe is her name. And I can say it again if it's not.
I think is it Keist? Did she say
Kist.
it's pronounced Keist?
Mm-hmm. We love you,
Okay.
Gwendolyn.
We love you, Gwendolyn, so much. You guys, I genuinely, so great news. We did think ahead about the fact that some/most people wouldn't have an opportunity to read this book prior to the episode being released. So we talked to her for half of the time with no spoilers. That's the front half. So you can listen to it, hear from this incredible author about kind of how she approached this and why these characters, and really flesh out sort of that first part of the story. And then the second part, we do talk through with spoilers about plot points and all of those things. Genuinely loved this book. It was, just as a warning, it's a little spooky for me. It is a spooky time book, but I loved it. It was so, so incredible. And I really am so excited for you guys to get a chance to listen to everything Gwendolyn said. It was a really amazing and special opportunity to be able to chat with her. And I genuinely 100% recommend reading this book and getting a chance to listen to her incredible interview.
Absolutely. And you can send us your thoughts on that and all the things that we've talked about on this episode today. Because again, yes, we want to know, what are your favorite metaphors? What are your answers to the questions that Lillian and I posed today? What do you think my weird dream meant?
I
What
think
do you
that's the most important one.
Yeah, seriously. So you can send us your thoughts and takes and just general excitement. Find us on all of the social platforms at Airbuds, and you can send us emails, airbuds@gmail.com.
And if you made it all the way here, thank you.
Yay!
And I'm really hoping that means that you weren't hate listening, that you were in fact listening to it because you enjoy our podcast. And if you do, we would love to be able to have more people join our lovely little community of incredible listeners and get to hear and share their thoughts. One of the best ways to get this in front of more people is to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or any of the platforms that you listen to. Those star ratings are so helpful and we appreciate them. A few sentences also makes a huge difference. And feel free to share this with friends and family that you know who you think might enjoy.
Absolutely. And for now, you guys, thank you for joining us on this roller coaster of wonderful highs and terrible lows. We will see you next week. And until then, happy Jane Eyre reading and watching. Bye.
Bye.